You bid farewell to the radiant youth, and he sent you back to our chapter house in Stonebridge, where I awaited your return. In the weeks that followed, news spread of Jane Cassinder's defeat. Her army scattered, giving us time to rest and regroup. Martin Guiscard returned safely from the Spire, along with Meister Wolf and the Automaton army. Only a few weeks later, elections were held in Stonebridge. Meister Wolf, who had been so public in his support of the Legion, swept to victory and was declared mayor of the city. He credited you for his success. The people of Stonebridge deeply respected your decision to hand over the dapper old gent to the city authorities. Only a few weeks later, elections were held in Stonebridge. Meister Wolf, who had been so public in his support of the Legion, almost won the office of mayor. But he was defeated in the end. Many people had wanted the dapper old gent to hang. They resented the fact that the Legion had spared his life, and they blamed poor Wolf. The Guild of Ironmongers became more profitable than ever, thanks to the harsh terms of servitude imposed upon the Cyclops workers in the foundry. By all accounts, Meister Kessel became the richest man in the city, but he did not forget his debt to us. His guild donated fine suits of armor, blades, and guns to the Legion, enough to equip an army when we finally replenish our ranks. After the humiliating events in the foundry, Meister Kessel was forced to resign as Guildmaster of Ironmongers. The Cyclopses negotiated a new contract for higher wages, and with the help of Meister Fiddlewick, formed a new workers' union. For the first time in 100 years, they were permitted to leave the foundry and spend their newfound wealth in the markets and taverns of Stonebridge. Cyclopses are becoming an increasingly common sight in Stonebridge, and many believe that they will eventually take their place as equal citizens of the town. After many months of confinement, the dapper old gent was sent to the gallows and hanged. His body was supposed to be returned to the Legion, but it vanished on the following night. To this day, no one has been able to find the gent's remains. It seems he is destined to remain a mystery in death, just as he was in life. Archambault du Payen, formerly known as the Dapper Old Gent, proved a valuable addition to the Legion. His knowledge of Legion magic allowed us to retake control of the Sentinels that had long guarded our chapter houses and estates. But the gent couldn't leave our chapter house without drawing an angry mob. His confinement started to drive him mad. So he returned to his beloved causeways, beneath an endless sky, and he dwells there still. But the people of Stonebridge still bore him a grudge, so we were forced to send the gent north for his own safety. There he took possession of Gunderic Manor, and all the magic that lay within. In time, the manor will again become a training ground for a new generation of Legion mages. The following winter was a harsh one in the Rukenval, just as Lazar Basili feared. Without any trade from the south, the people of Raven's Rill went hungry, and many died. Among them were the widow Ludmilla, and Lazar's friend and scribe Grigori. When spring came, the dead were mourned, and Lazar's people did their best to carry on. With the reopening of the Heroes' Crypt, pilgrims returned to the Rukenval, and merchants followed. The following winter was harsh, just as Lazar Basili feared. But thanks to the trade from the south, the people of Raven's Rill stayed warm and fed. When spring came, many more pilgrims arrived, and the town of Raven's Rill grew wealthy again. Lazar and his people built a new stone wall around the town, and reclaimed their abandoned houses and farmsteads from the forest. It is a happy change of fortune for a long-suffering town. In his last letter to me, Lazar added one other piece of news. Gunderic Manor has a new mistress, a witch called Leona. The manor has become a gathering place for scores of Lescanzi witches, many of whom are apparently quite beautiful. Lazar reports that the young men of Raven's Rill have also begun frequenting the manor, much to the irritation of their mothers and wives. Since the local men will not hear any talk of banishing the witches, it appears that Leona and her people have found a new home, which was perhaps what she intended from the start. Queen Rosalind abandoned Glitterdelve, embarking on a tour of all the cities and towns of the West, meeting as many of her subjects as she could. The Queen showed all the energy of youth, and I think she fully expects to reunite the country in a matter of months, not years. Reality may not be so kind, as Lord Devonsey has tried to make her understand. In truth, the future of this country depends more upon what we decide. If she doesn't have the Legion behind her, the Queen is only a single voice, well-meaning though she might be. As for Devonsey himself, I think the man was impressed by your decision to spare Jane Cassinder, as the Queen had asked. When he last visited Stonebridge, he spent a great deal of time in our chapter house. I believe he might actually be willing to rejoin our ranks, if we choose to accept him. Soraya, the last of Jane's handmaids, was delivered to Stonebridge by our army. At first, she proved a sullen and difficult prisoner. But as time passed, Anjali spent more and more time in her presence. Both were aware, I think, that they were the last of their kind. In recent weeks, Soraya seems a different woman. She follows Anjali like a devoted little sister, and she has expressed a desire to train as a legionnaire. I maintain my suspicion of any Archon who once followed Jane Cassinder, but I think that redemption is not impossible, even for her. Soraya, the last of Jane's handmaids, was delivered to Stonebridge by our army. At first, she proved a sullen and difficult prisoner. But as time has passed, I have seen her change. When you are near, she is calm, respectful, and her anger fades. Soraya is aware, I think, that you both are the last of your kind, and she sees you for the leader that you are. I maintain my suspicion of any Archon who once followed Jane Cassinder, but I think that redemption is not impossible, even for her. Rajani and her sisters returned to Stonebridge, quietly and carefully disguised. Jane Cassinder's defeat affected them deeply, though not in the way I expected. Their devotion to Jane was replaced by a deep admiration for your companion, Anjali. I think they saw in Anjali the leader they should have followed all along, and they have lately expressed a desire to join our ranks. I maintain my suspicion of any Archon who once followed Jane, but I believe that redemption is not impossible, even for them. Rajani and her sisters returned to Stonebridge, quietly and carefully disguised. Jane Cassinder's defeat affected them deeply, though not in the way I expected. Their devotion to Jane was replaced by a deep admiration for you. I think they see in you the leader they should have followed all along, and they have lately expressed a desire to join our ranks. I maintain my suspicion of any Archon who once followed Jane, but I believe that redemption is not impossible, even for them. Jane Cassinder accepted her exile with dignity. She journeyed to the spire one last time, and assembled her handmaids. They gathered at the top of the spire, their hands joined together. In the brilliant light of the midday sun, the spire shone white, obscuring them from view. In the next moment they were gone. No one has ever seen them again. Jane Cassinder was brought as a prisoner to Stonebridge, and a great public trial was convened to decide her fate. Representatives of all the major factions sat in judgment. Everyone agreed that she was guilty of terrible crimes against Ebb, but her sentence was the cause of great debate. It was Meister Mudgutter, with typical goblin cunning, who devised her punishment. Jane Cassinder was imprisoned in the same mining tunnels where she had trapped the royal court, sealed forever beneath the ground, in the endless dark. An Archon thrives upon fire. Who knows what terrible change she might suffer when she is forever deprived of light? I only know this: the pale, withered hand that emerges from her cell each day to take her plate of food bears little resemblance to the woman who was shut inside. Jane Cassinder was delivered into the hands of the royal court. Just as Jane herself had predicted, Rosalind treated her with compassion and respect. Perhaps the girl queen saw only Jane's royal blood, and she was desperate for some connection to the family she had lost. Jane was treated almost as a member of the court, a prisoner in name only, Many whispered openly that this was no justice at all. It was no surprise that it ended as it did. One morning, Jane Cassandra was found strangled in her bed, a noose around her throat. The noose, many said, that should have hanged her. Surrounded by men and women of the royal court who had suffered terribly at Jane's hands, it was impossible to find her killer. But that was not the greatest mystery of all. For Jane Cassandra had not been bound or restrained in any way. She should have been able to defend herself from her murderers, but she did not. Jane Cassandra was as good as her word, though I had my doubts at first. She returned to the cities and towns of the East and urged the people to end their war with the Legion and the Crown. Jane's repentance was heartfelt, and many were swayed by her words. But others have not been so compliant. The Church Synod in Bisselburg, who once called Jane a saint, have declared her apostate and threatened her life. Though Jane refuses bodyguards of any kind, Queen Rosalind fears for her life. And if anything befalls her, our gains in the East may yet be lost. As for the Legion, the rest of our story is yet to be told. We have a nation to reforge, a fellowship to rebuild, and old enemies who would see us destroyed. And we have questions to decide. Who will assume true power in Ebb if the nation is restored? And who will take the mantle of Grand Master? But these matters I leave for another chronicle, and another time. Whatever happens, know that you will not face the future alone. The Legion will stand by you, always.